What's up, folks? Jacob Sipkin with TZ Strength here. Got a new video for you this week. I want to talk about an organizational framework that I use for thinking about the structure of WODs. So WODs, what I refer to as sport training for fitness sport athletes, CrossFit athletes, etc., are probably the hardest, most confusing part of programming because they don't fall neatly into any single category. If you're doing heavy squats, you know you're doing strength training. If you're doing a 5K run, you know you're doing endurance training. WODs, these multimodal endurance pieces that are sort of the cornerstone of CrossFit, grid, fitness sports like that, they don't fall so neatly into one of those categories. They sort of do a lot of things and involve a lot of elements. So what I want to present to you today is a framework that I use to help me think about these types of workouts, to make sure that we're doing enough of all of the different types of workouts. And I want to emphasize that this is not it's not something that replaces more conventional description and prescription models like you still need to understand how aerobic training works. You still need to understand how threshold training works, how strength training works, etc. This is simply for WODs. And it's important to understand that when I think about WODs, about multimodal endurance pieces, I think of it in terms of it being sport-specific training. They are to fitness sport athletes. WODs are as scrimmaging is to football players. It's practicing your sport. That doesn't mean that the physiological impacts of the training don't matter. They absolutely do, and you can absolutely take them into account. But because they're not quite as neat and clean and organized as the physiological metrics that we would find when looking at a more classical method of training, something more conventional, I think it's helpful to have a sort of organizational framework that is unique to multimodal endurance training. It's helpful for a couple of things. First of all, as a prescriptive tool, thinking in these terms is going to help you make sure that you're consistently including all of the various sort of types of workout that I'm going to talk about in your programming. So making sure that you're not biasing one different type of workout over the others, which is obviously really important for a sport that's built on variety, and it's very, very easy to fall into the trap of writing a specific type of workout. It happens subconsciously, it happens to me as well, which is exactly why I devised this particular system. It's a helpful descriptive tool as well, because thinking in these terms that we're going to talk about is going to help you analyze workouts and analyze athletes. So when you look at a workout, you're going to be able to think of it within this framework, and it's going to be able to tell you more information about the workout and how an athlete should approach it. It's also going to help you look at where an athlete is strong and weak based on this framework. And both descriptively and prescriptively, thinking in these terms is going to help you scale workouts appropriately, because it's going to help you understand a workout and its intent and its effect more clearly. So, what is this model I'm talking about? So I think of workouts in terms of gears, and there's 3 gears: first, second, and third. Okay. Now, first gear is going to be defined by workouts which are primarily limited by the actual difficulty of the movements involved. So an example would be regionals NAT. Pretty much nobody was limited in regionals NAT by their aerobic capacity or their threshold capacity. Instead, what they were limited by was that the movements involved, particularly the strict muscle-ups, are very challenging. So it's a first gear workout. Think of it as low gear, because the movement itself is what challenges them. Something else that might be considered first gear is, for example, a workout that has deadlifts that are really close to maximal load, so it's the deadlift itself is very heavy, or any lift. Second gear workouts are limited more or less equally by the difficulty of the movement and relevant endurance metrics. So the movements are not easy, but they're not so hard that they're going to cause you to hit a wall, that they're just at the absolute limit of your strength or skill, but there are relevant endurance metrics to consider as well. So a great example of this would be the Regionals 2016 final workout, the thrusters and legless rope climbs. Obviously, very, very big endurance component. Heart rate's very high. But the movement, especially the rope climb, is a pretty challenging movement in and of itself, and it's able to slow you down. So both of those movements are, the workout itself is both limited by the endurance factor, the relevant endurance, but also by the movement. Finally, we have third gear, which is going to be defined as workouts primarily limited by the relevant endurance metrics. So the movements themselves are not hard. You could, under virtually any circumstances, you could complete another rep in terms of strength, power, skill, but the endurance is very, very challenging. So a great example of this would be 15.5. That's the 27, 21, 15, 9 of calorie rowing and thrusters from the 2015 Open. The thrusters are fairly light. Rowing is a movement that is obviously very endurance dominant. You're not really limited by how difficult the movement is in isolation. Instead, you're limited by how challenging to your endurance the combination and format of the workout is. Another great example of a third gear workout is Fight Gone Bad, which is kind of specifically designed so that the movements themselves are not challenging in isolation, but when you combine them and do them at a very fast rate, it's very, very hard because your heart rate is so high, so the endurance aspect of the workout is very challenging. A couple notes. Yes, workouts can have elements from multiple gears. So if you have a workout that has assault bike calories paired with strict muscle-ups, for example, obviously the strict muscle-ups are what we would call the first gear movement, the assault bike's the third gear movement. And if you want to think in terms of what a workout is, if you want to think, is it first, second, or third gear, look to the limiting factor. What is going to be the factor in the workout that determines the outcome? So in a workout that is, for example, 7 strict muscle-ups, 21 calories in the assault bike, 3 rounds for time, most likely the strict muscle-up is going to be the limiting factor. If you have athletes who can do all those strict muscle-ups unbroken and others who cannot, it's pretty unlikely that the athlete who cannot do the muscle-ups unbroken is going to make up for that time lost on the assault bike unless there's a really huge disparity between the athletes. With that being said, it's not all that important to decide, oh, this workout is exclusively this gear. This is more to give you a framework to look at workouts and think about how to structure your training to make sure that your athletes are getting enough of everything. Another note, workouts absolutely can be different gears for different athletes. If you have a workout, for example, we'll take regionals, deadlift, run, and GHD from 2016 regionals. If you have a 425-pound deadlift or a 445-pound deadlift, this is probably going to be a first gear workout for you. You're going to move through the run and the GHD, and you're just going to struggle through those deadlifts. On the other hand, if you have a huge deadlift, this workout is going to be probably second gear for you. The movements are moderately challenging. There's a very, very tough endurance component. So it absolutely differs. And this is where the coach steps in and has 2 parts to play. The first is the coach needs to decide if it's more important that the athlete complete the workout in a way that's as close as possible to prescribed, or if it's more important to achieve a particular training effect. And then the second job is that if the coach decides it's the latter, if it's more important to achieve a specific training effect, they scale the workout appropriately. And again, having these tools in hand, thinking in this framework of first, second, and third gear, is going to allow the coach to better analyze the workout and do a better job scaling. So guys, the most important takeaway here, the purpose of this framework is not to have a be-all, end-all method of creating workouts. It's not that important that your workouts fit into one of these categories specifically. Instead, the idea is to take a pretty complex thing, that is the creation of these multimodal workouts, which have a lot of different and differing components that are often on opposite ends of the spectrum, heavy lifting and running, for example. The point is that you can now look at these workouts with this structure and just give yourself a little bit more organization when assigning or analyzing workouts. Hope this was helpful for you guys, and thank you very much for watching.